Morning everyone, Jack here at AG Pearce, just giving you another crop update. Sorry things have been a little bit quiet, just been trying to get on with Christmas, getting orders out and getting through the busy period. So I'm just north of Kings Lynn and very close to Sandringham in that direction, on an estate at a place called Castle Rising. As probably everybody's aware, it's been quite a challenging period due to weather, particularly rainfall. So I thought today I'd just take a quick opportunity to report on what's gone on and also, more importantly, give a bit of an outlook for the next 4 to 5 months, because we're sort of entering a really critical part of the carrot season and also other sort of vegetable seasons. You know, it's been a nightmare, I'll be honest. It's been really hard going, especially over the Christmas period, to get orders out. We haven't said a huge amount about it, we just sort of got on. We're very fortunate in this part of the world, Norfolk and Suffolk, we do have very light soils and we're naturally drier than other parts of the country anyway. But what we've had to do is isolate certain fields and identify certain fields that we know that we'll always be able to lift in. And over the Christmas period, we were harvesting mainly in Suffolk, at Elvedon, on some of the lighter lands there. Hence why we haven't actually harvested this field like we should have, because it's just been too wet. So the short-term impact has been really trying to just get crop out of the ground, keep availability going for customers, not stopping, always having a contingency, which I think as a business we've done quite well. But it's, you know, come at a cost in terms of financially and time and labour in trying to achieve that. Other parts of the country, I can't tell, and I don't know, but having seen crop driving around, we went to North Lincolnshire to look at some crop the other day, and it was underwater in large parts of the field. So those carrots or those parsnips or whatever you're looking at, potatoes, they're not going to come out of the ground in a particularly good shape. And that problem is only going to progress now. So anything that's really sat in a lot of water, even though it's dried out, it's going to continue to degrade as the season progresses. Something that I did want to show you is what the impact is where crop has been flooded, which I can actually show you in the bottom end of this field now, which is frozen. You can see the ground here is nearly completely saturated. Obviously it's frozen, but it's still extremely soft, and the carrots here have completely degraded. Put on one of these, you can see that this is unfortunately what happens to crop when it sits in a lot of water, and it doesn't matter whether it's carrots, leeks, brassicas, they will all start to degrade and start to rot. This field's quite a large field, it's about 20 acres, and it's actually on a little bit of a slope. So when the rain has been falling, it has been coming down to the end of this field and collecting at the bottom of these beds. Like I said, if I pan up now, you can see this is only like a couple of beds isolated at the bottom of the field, but it gives a representation of what worst case scenario can be, where crop has sat. If this field wasn't quite as well draining and it didn't have the aspect that it had, the amount of water could have done quite a lot of damage very, very quickly. In terms of Scotland, where we've got our sort of late season carrots, and most of the industry does, they've been hit harder than anybody. I've already reported on some of the losses we've had in the fields due to flooding. Fields a bit like this, where we've got runoff or rivers at the bottom of the field that burst their banks, and we've lost probably 10% of our acreage. It's not a disaster in terms of losses, it's more of a financial loss than it's going to make a material impact to our sort of tonnages for the year, but it's still not ideal. When we were trying to protect the crops and straw in November, we had a horrendous time. Conditions were awful. It took us probably 2 weeks, in 2 weeks work of, and it probably should have taken us half that amount of time to just get crop protected. Those crops now will sit and they will have to store under straw up until sort of May time, early June, to sort of tie in with new season. And I think that's where my biggest concern is going to be. I think it's going to be okay up until May, but it's very much going to be how those crops will sit as temperatures start to rise, albeit up in Scotland soil temperatures stay relatively low at that time of year, but as temperatures rise, crops under straw, it's under black plastic, and it's sat in a lot of water, and there's going to be a bacterial loading that could cause breakdown. And I think my biggest fear at the moment is crop quality not holding up at the end of the season. So long-term outlook, I don't want to be too alarmist. I'm going to be proved wrong on this, but I'm not overly hopeful towards the end of the season and the back end of this year. We're quite fortunate in East Anglia, where we've got a lot of our crop, that we've fared quite well in terms of field conditions, and crop hasn't sat in a lot of water. But as I showed you, where crop does sit in water, it's going to start to cause a bacterial breakdown. And even though the ground dries up, as time goes on, that's only going to get worse and worse and worse. So I think it's going to be a bit of a race to get those crops out of the ground and get them moved on quite quickly before they do start to break down. Now, that would be fine if we then had an early start to the new season, but I think talking to growers in this area and looking back in some of our previous crop reports where I've been doing videos, we would normally start doing field prep in late December, early January. I've got videos of us drilling and laying poly carrots one day after this video has been filmed on the 12th of January. So we're not going to get really close to any land at the moment in terms of prep for probably a good week or so, and this is going to delay all the drillings of new season crop. And it's not just going to be carrots, it's going to be potatoes, anything that's going to be wanting to be drilled at the moment for the earliest part of the season. I think there's going to be a delay. So potentially the new season on carrots could start a week late. And if the old season doesn't hold up, we're going to end up with a gap in the industry. Now, there might be UK crop about, who knows? But again, it's going to be the quality of that crop. It could potentially be compromised and difficult to work with, or just not be fit for consumption. So I think, like I said, I'm not trying to be alarmist. I think I learned from last year, I would always like to try and give worst case scenarios to people and present that. Best case scenario is crop holds up, we have a really good spring, even though crops are drilled late, things start to grow quite quickly, and it could all be absolutely fine. But I think there's a real concern within our business. I haven't spoken to others elsewhere in the industry, but I'd imagine, even though they're not saying it, they're probably thinking it, that we could have quite a significant gap at the end of the season of at least a week to 3 weeks on carrots. Other crops, like I said, are going to be affected. Potatoes are going to be a very similar story. Potato crops, there's not going to be a huge amount of old crop left at the end of this season. And again, if new season crops are delayed, that's going to have an impact. Onions wise, we're quite fortunate. We've gone and checked our overwintered sets this year, and they've actually fared really well. We're fortunate with the field selection that they've missed any really bad weather and rain, and they're actually growing quite well. So we're sort of fairly confident on brown onions with the stored crop we've got, and sort of new season crops progressing. If stuff can get in the ground, we should be okay. Red onions is looking a lot trickier, and I'm already talking to customers about red onions. So without being too doom and gloom, I'll sort of sign off and just say I think it's worth getting in contact. I'll be talking to the majority of customers over the next week just around potential outlooks and what we can do as a business to mitigate risk for customers. But yeah, I think as an industry, we've been hit with another difficult season after last year, which was probably one of the worst in living memories. So yeah, it's frustrating, and it just goes to show the impact that weather, call it climate, but let's call it weather, because it's we're talking relatively short term, but we do seem to be having stronger weather influences, whether it's heavy rain, dry periods, hot periods, and it's just increasing the risk of growing and the risk to supply chains. So it's something that I think as an industry we all need to be aware of and act accordingly. So yeah, please get in touch. My details will be at the end of the video, and as ever, always happy to help. Have a good day. Thanks.